Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together to welcome Senior Minister of State for Education and Communication and Information, Dr. Janil Puthucheary.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. I am Natania.
And I am Ariel.
And it is our pleasure
to be your MCs for today.
A very warm welcome to St. Gallen Symposium 2018 Singapore Forum.
First, we would like to invite Mr. Beat Ulrich, Chief Executive Officer of St. Gallen Foundation, to deliver his welcome address. Mr. Ulrich, please.
Dear Senior Minister Puthucheary, as our guest of honor, dear panelists, dear Ambassador Kupfer, Ambassador of Switzerland here to Singapore, dear Alexander Melkers, Special Advisor to our symposium here in Singapore, dear James, dear Wiswa, dear Eileen, dear students, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to the third St. Gallen Symposium Singapore Forum. As you heard, my name is Beat Ulrich and I'm the CEO of the St. Gallen Foundation for International Studies. I want to keep this short to clear the stage for our distinguished panelists, but let me still share a few thoughts that are important to know in regard to this wonderful occasion here. Today's event should generate food for thought and network towards the symposium's global conference held in Switzerland in May each year. We will be holding the 48th edition of the St. Gallen Symposium this May. Our initiative was founded back in 1969 during a time when various student movements assembled to mass protests in Germany, Austria and Switzerland. They demonstrated for various reasons. They wanted the end of the Vietnam War, they wanted gender equality, unbiased education, resignation of current governments. All had in common that they challenged the status quo and that they rejected the authorities back then. As opposed to the ones demonstrating, 5 students from the University of St. Gallen believed that a more sustainable solution to the clash of opinions would only be achieved by launching a dialogue between the different groups. So they founded the St. Gallen Symposium, which today is one of the world's leading student-run initiatives for fruitful discussions across generations. Each year, the symposium has brought together leaders and decision makers from business and politics with the most promising young minds from all over the world. Today, almost 50 years since the foundation of our symposium, we still believe in the importance of tackling challenges by bridging generations. For almost 20 years, Singapore has played an important role in the St. Gallen Symposium's development, both on a global but also on a regional level here in Southeast Asia. This would not have been possible without a tremendous support of NYAAC and, on a more personal level, without the enormous efforts of its executive director, Mr. James So. Dear James, we in St. Gallen are extremely grateful for everything you have done for us during the past years. So, ladies and gentlemen, may I please you to give a big hand to Mr. James So. And this is also for Eileen Yap, his colleague. In St. Gallen and around the world, we create debates, and I do believe that in today's context, this is more important than ever before. The topic of this year's symposium, Beyond the End of Work, offers the chance to reflect on the way that our work, the interaction of companies, and the challenges of our nations are changing. but also what new opportunities will be created in these fields by artificial intelligence robots, but also by new mobility and new ways of living and thinking. I'm extremely grateful to have a first relevant input and discussion from a regional perspective, and I look forward to the speech and the panel today. I would like to express my gratitude to our guest of honor, the panelists and the moderator for being with us today. You know they are Dr. Janil Puthucheary, Senior Minister of State for Education, Communication and Information, Ms. Janet Eng, Vice President, IBM Asia Pacific and Chairman, Institute of System Science of the National University of Singapore, Mr. Patrick Tay, Member of Parliament, West Coast GRC and Chairman, Government Parliamentary Committee, Manpower and Assistant Secretary General, National Trade Union Congress, Mr. Warren Fernandez, Editor-in-Chief, the Straits Times and Singapore Press Holdings, and our moderator, Mr. Viswa Sadasivan, Chief Executive Officer, Strategic Moves Private Limited, and former nominated Member of Parliament. Thank you very much for participating today, also to you, our audience here. You are part of a relevant debate on this year's topic and also of our sustainable and important initiative for a constructive dialogue across generations, this Gallen Symposium. You can further participate by following the debates on social media and on our website. But now we all look forward to inspiring words by Senior Minister Dr. Janil Puthucheary and stimulating discussions on the panel. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Ulrich.
May I now invite His Excellency Mr. Thomas Kupfer, Ambassador of Switzerland to Singapore, to address us. Excellency, please.
Dear Minister, dear guests, participants of this Singapore St. Gallen Symposium, very pleased to be here with you. As Ambassador of Switzerland, it is a little bit my task, together with my colleagues at the embassy, to follow, to accompany, and where possible enhance the developments, the relations between Switzerland and Singapore, which is a very satisfying task because these relations are obviously excellent, intensive, and quite interesting. I would say our two countries are in a very similar position in these days. We are relatively small countries. We are countries with a similar setup of population, languages, cultural diversity. No resources, no natural resources, I have to say, many others, no natural resources. Therefore, very much oriented towards the trade, towards the international business cooperation, also very much oriented to education, which adds today, importantly, to the development of a society. I may say, without being unmodest, we're also doing quite good, both of our countries, but we have also the same challenges today. The challenges which are obviously the challenges of a modern society in the global environment, obviously ensure security, being individual security or political, military security, but then enhance the economy, make sure that our business, our economies in our two countries can compete with the actual challenges of the globalization, digitalization, the fourth digital revolution, innovation, and make sure also that our education systems are fit for the future. And there I mean education system, not only what is regarding the universities, but also very much regarding the professional education, the vocational training. You know, there Switzerland has a long tradition, and I'm very glad that Singapore decision makers have taken up this over the last few years and are on the way to develop their own solution for make sure that their future students are fit for the economy, future skills is a key word today in Singapore, and I think that it is done with a lot of enthusiasm and also with a lot of success. So what I mean is we are very much on a similar track. There is some differences. Now the climate is normally a big difference. In the moment we have almost Swiss weather here in Singapore. But there is obviously other differences. Don't have to elaborate too much on that. The political setup is still very different between our two countries. We are very much a bottom-up country with participation and with referendum initiatives and all these elements. Singapore is still a strong top-down country, very successfully organized. The interesting thing is that at the end, on these challenges, the challenges are similar, as I said. I didn't mention also smart city and the future economy and so on. So the challenges are the same. The way to tackle it is often different. The solutions are often also quite similar. That's the reason we work closely together. And now I come quickly to the St. Gallen Symposium. This is obviously a symposium which is not only Singapore, Switzerland, it's much wider. It's a global symposium with a long tradition, but there is a strong Singapore-Swiss connection. And the challenge is there, and particularly also the one is discussed again this year, beyond work, is a topic which very close to our thinking in Switzerland, to Singapore, and also worldwide. And I believe that this St. Gallen Symposium in general, but particularly with these topics of this year, can really be a contribution to get closer to solutions in these challenging topics. So I would like to thank again the organizers to have invited me, to have associated me. I think it's one of our very good bridges of the many bridges we have between Singapore and Switzerland, and I wish you good luck for this symposium today and also for the symposium in St. Gallen in the beginning of May. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency.
It is now my pleasure to invite our guest of honor, Dr. Janil Puthucheary, Senior Minister of State for Education and Communication and Information, to deliver the keynote address on the theme of the St. Gallen Symposium 2018 Singapore Forum, Beyond the End of Work. Minister, please.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to join you today on this interesting topic, the end of work. The topic, the title, perhaps a little bit truncated. Maybe there were not enough characters. It's not a tweet, but the intent is the end of work as we know it. And I could begin by asking if that's true. What would it look like? How should we begin to consider if it's going to happen? But I'm going to suggest that we don't need to do that. The reason we're here, the reason why we've gathered an august panel to discuss this matter, and you've consented to listening to me drone on for a couple of hours, no, just not so long, maybe 20 minutes, is because you already accept that work is fundamentally changing. Work is fundamentally changing. The nature of work is fundamentally changing. The work trajectory, the career structures that I grew up expecting as a student don't exist anymore. And there's a very significant and serious anticipation that the pace of change will only accelerate. So the end of work as we know it actually arrived a few years ago, and we start to see it in the Singapore around us. There are many, many examples extant out there. If you think of some of the iconic economic structures that we have in Singapore, our ports, our airports, for example, you can see this idea of the end of work as we know it being played out live. If you're going to the new, some of you may have experienced the new terminal in Changi, and you compare that to what it would have been like to fly out of Singapore or fly into Singapore, not that many years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago. The automation that has occurred, the use of data, the use of technology, not just for the convenience of you, the passenger, not just for the opportunity to reduce business costs and improve business efficiency for the airlines and all the other vendors in there, but also to fundamentally increase and enhance our security, both as an airport and as a nation. And you can see that in your experience as a passenger, as a customer, walking through the airport. What you may not realize is the experience of the worker. And we're talking about the end of work as we know it. Because to you, the experience has become hopefully a little bit more pleasurable. I like to think that Changi is a pleasurable airport. Not all airports are, but hopefully more pleasurable, hopefully more engaging, and you have a bit more confidence navigating what may be a potentially stressful situation. But what about the workers, the people whose work as we know it, as we knew it 10 to 15 years ago, has now ended? Well, the reality is they haven't stopped working. The workers have been redeployed. Work has not just been found for the employees of the airport, the old-style airport. No one went out and said, we've just got to create some new jobs just to make sure these people stay in employment. No. What has happened is a whole list of job opportunities have been created as a result of that transformation through technology. And the workers, the employees, have had to reskill and retrain in order to then fulfill those roles. So the number of workers hasn't necessarily changed. If anything, their productivity is one metric, but their ability to do things and the kinds of things that they can do for you have grown so much more in scope and in scale. So you, as the individual going through, may see less workers because they may be out there doing different things. But as a system, as an opportunity for employment, actually, if anything, further opportunities have been created. If you look at our ports, for example, a keystone, a pillar of our economic infrastructure. Again, lots of redevelopment and the opportunity to think about how technology can optimize work there. And in truth, it has. It has completely transformed one of the iconic parts of our economy. Again, not something in the public eye so much, but again, workers have not been removed, but they have been reskilled and redeployed. Now, these are things which are large, they're economic in nature largely. Most of it happens away from the public eye. But today, some of this is being played out in experiences, in situations which are much, much more personal in our daily lives. Health, healthcare, social services, F&B, going down and getting some food. And you can start to see that similar type of transformation occurring in these arenas today. Now, when it gets a little bit closer to home, we get a little bit more anxious. We need to understand a little bit deeper about what is going to be our response and what is going to be our trajectory and what is going to be our opportunity. So the truth of the matter is this hasn't just started, it's not going to start today when we finish our discussion, our symposium. It didn't start, a handful of months ago. The economic transformations that I've described started because people were planning for it, investing in it, and making efforts years ago. But it's now playing out in different arenas. So what is happening in the personal space? In healthcare, a sector that I had quite a lot of personal experience from, you can see the transformation. Looking at whether it's just the information that's being managed, whether it's the automation of for example, the work of a pharmacy dispensary, whether it's the issues around, for example, cleaning of hospitals, simple tasks that are high volume but very important to do. How do you extend the productivity of the workers? It's starting to happen. In F&B, the manpower limitation for growth has been a big driver at using technology to improve productivity and efficiency. But employment hasn't shrunk. Employment is maintained at full. And so the role of technology in these spaces is to change the opportunity for business, to do a different type of business and to do that business faster, more efficiently, serve more customers. But you as students, as people thinking about your careers, as you see these disruptions, as you hear stories of people having to retrain and reskill to learn about new technologies, you ask yourself, what is the relevance of my education? What will be the relevance of my education going forward? And how will Singapore respond? Well, we have been responding. We have looked at this and we have put in place a number of measures. And I thought today I might talk a little bit about what we have done in the education space to respond to this idea that work as we know it has ended or is ending or may end in the next few years. What are the factors that you have to think about in designing the response of the government as far as education is concerned? The first is the structure of education. Traditionally, you had a time of being taught and then a time of working. You had to make some choices along the way, and you sort of committed yourself to a path. And you had some reasonable expectation that the path that you chose, whatever diploma, degree, or skill that you chose, would have some relevance for the rest of your life. And by the time you were 25 and you were out of education for a couple of years, you started to develop some skills. You might have to change jobs, but the skill that you use was more or less the same. If there was a disruption, as we have had in the past in Singapore, where issues around the port or the biomedical industry or various other disruptions have happened, it was felt as a big change. 5,000 workers in this sector now are likely to lose their jobs and now need to retrain into work in the integrated resorts or move towards the airport, for example. It was seen as a significant, discrete, and potentially difficult change because something had happened. What is happening now, and you all will know this as well as anybody else, you have a continuous process of change. It is not a single discrete industry or a single discrete employer where suddenly a group of workers comes out. It is a continuous process of change and disruption, meaning that you as a person following that career through your life may have to reskill and retrain multiple times. It doesn't become something unusual and extraordinary for a handful of people that were unexpectedly affected. It becomes the norm for everybody to start thinking about 3, 4, 5 different sets of career skills over time. The second factor is a sense of uncertainty from the system's point of view. If the pace of change is picking up, if the ability to have ideas, products, platforms, and services develop in Silicon Valley, in Switzerland, and delivered at the speed of broadband around the world within a matter of days, how do you have that certainty that it is this skill that you need for 10 years, never mind the rest of your life? Or this particular technology that you need to know about for this phase of your career? Because that pace of change has a significant increase. It's getting faster and faster for this change to sweep around the world. And our position as a global, connected, open city, integrated into the world economy, means that we can feel that change as fast as anywhere else in the world, if not one of the first to feel that change. And the third factor that we have to think about in terms of shaping our response is the changing aspirations and the changing needs of your generation, of students of today and the students of tomorrow. Do you want to be told, this is the economic sector that you need to go into? This is the part of the workforce that you need to be assigned to. These are the, or do you want to accept some degree of responsibility for the choices that you make, some autonomy and control over the path that you choose, with the uncertainty that comes with, but with the opportunity to change your mind later on? Given these shifts, what are we doing? Well, we have transformed, and we will continue to transform, the adult education landscape. We've talked about this many times, but worth repeating. We want a situation where after you finish your formal education, you have the confidence and the opportunity to access training and retraining. Either because this is something you're interested in, just for your own interest, or because this is something that you need to learn in order to stay in your current job, upgrade to stay within your current job. Or this is something you need to do to change jobs because your sector may be at risk, or you are no longer able to work effectively in that sector. And we have to have this skills future response in the adult training landscape respond to all three of these imperatives. Intrinsic passion, an economic imperative driven by the industry, and your own sense of what I want to do with my career and my life. And what have we done? We have invested in developing the adult training landscape. The adult training providers, adult education providers have significantly increased the number of courses that are available. We have put in subsidies and skills future credits. We have even worked with employers to help them send their employees for skills future training. We've put together online portals to help you look at what training courses you should be matched towards. But we need to go a little bit further. And we need to go further because of the extent to which this becomes a key strategy to help us deal with the end of work as we know it. The kinds of skills, the kinds of deep technical, cognitive skills that you need to be able to develop also rest within our institutes of education, like here. And the institutes of education, of higher education, need to shift and play a significant role in adult education. Our tertiary education space has largely been part of that formal education landscape, where you stopped at 18 or 22, and a small number of people stayed on as adults doing a master's or a postgraduate and coming and working and studying part-time. And that has already started to shift, where the unis and polys and ITEs have started to make moves into the adult education space. And that is a very different type of sets of skills, because you are now saying that the kind of really critical teaching that you were able to receive as an undergraduate, as a poly student, is now available for you to get again as an adult. Not in a 2-year course or a 3-year course, in smaller, bite-sized micro courses, but the outcome that you can now shift from one career to the next as if you had gone back to poly, as if you had gone back to uni. That's the kind of outcome that we want to make available in the adult space. What then is the response from the formal education sector? If you are running a primary school, a secondary school, and you say that all of this education is now going to be available out there in the adult education landscape, how should the primary and secondary schools respond? Well, we have moved in a significant number of directions. The first is you need to change how you address the idea of education. That a big part of formal education from 6 to 16 should be to prepare the students for this world where they have to take on the responsibility of choosing what they study, how they study, when they study it, and do it again. Being committed to being a self-directed lifelong learner. Some of you, most of you all, are likely too old to have seen the shift because you're not in primary school and secondary school anymore. But it's happening. A big part of that is using applied learning programs. And because we haven't spent too much time imagineering a nice name for it, we call it the applied learning programs. Looking at how we can take the education that you get in primary and secondary schools and make them directly relevant to the industry of today. Not to the industry of 10 years from now when the student finally is out in industry. We need to demonstrate as the student is learning how they can take that learning and apply it. So in the applied learning programs, it is not a theoretical case study that a teacher takes from industry or takes from a magazine and brings into the classroom. It is a deep and direct partnership with the community or with industry partners, either to bring those community partners or industry partners into the school or to bring the students out into industry. So the experience is real, it is immediately relevant, and the students can learn about what we call the meta skills of applying their formal education to the industry and to the use case. Now the reality is there is uncertainty. We don't know which industries will be relevant when this 10-year-old exits formal education 12, 14 years later on. But it is the process of doing it that they need to be able to take with them. And so the applied learning programs are vast in variety. We are not trying to say every school must have the same approach, the same program, the same industry partner. Fully accept that it's going to be a very, very varied, integrated landscape out there. But all the schools are doing it, and it's significantly changing the primary and secondary school landscape. The next shift that we need to think about actually affects what we do in the higher education space. If the higher education providers are now making some of these skills and opportunities available to you as an adult, or even more, there's an expectation that you do this as an adult. What there is a little bit more scope and space within the early part of higher education to think about the common modules and common skills that everybody needs to know about, especially when those common skills and common modules will help you make those shifts later on. And so, by choosing to do these things, what happens in primary schools, in secondary schools, in tertiary education is already shifting and has been shifting for some years now. The reason we sort of still breathlessly talk about when are we going to start is because the people who are experiencing this are still in their teens. They are not yet even in higher education. And they're certainly not writing columns for the Straits Times or giving talks and online commentary. But it's not going to be far when these people are going to come out in the workforce, having experienced an education very, very different from what I have. And one of the provocative things I'd like you to think about is perhaps that rather than talking about the end of work as we know it, maybe what we are starting to see is the end of education as I knew it when I went through school. The adults of today, the education that they have, when I look at my 3 sons, the education that they are receiving is really very, very different from anything that I've had. What will our work be like in order to integrate the products of that education? Actually, I think that's one of the key things that we need to think about. The response to the end of work has already started. What will we then do as a society to then deal with what the government, the state, the educators, and the institutions have done? There is a thread that runs through all of this. And you may note that I haven't actually spoken about technology or smart nation or a digital economy or digital disruption. Because we don't want that to be a separate applied learning program or a separate subject or a separate initiative. What we want are the responses to, whether you call it smart nation, whether you call it the digital economy, whether you call it digital government. It needs to be part of everything that we do. It needs to be infused in every single subject that we are thinking about. And that is what we are doing. If you look at what we do in mathematics, in science, there's significant chunks which are coding, computational thinking, logic structures, which are the building blocks for what you need later on to deal with these skills. We make robotics available through many either CCAs or applied learning programs, engineering skills, but we don't know which programming language you need to learn today. 5 or 10 years from now, that it may be obsolete. But it is the process of learning these things that we need to make possible. And so they are being made present and possible in primary schools, in secondary schools, and they are a big chunk of what we're doing under the Skills Future series and the Skills Future adult education space. We recognize that it's not just about coding or learning how to work with robotics or AI and so forth. Sometimes some of it is also cultural training. So a big part of how we design the tech-related Skills Future programs under the Tech Skills Accelerator, it's called TESA, is looking at how this digital startup culture in the economy is different from a traditional labor-driven economy or a traditional resource-driven economy. How do you take a 45-year-old who's worked in garment manufacturing or who has been in the ports and not just teach them how to code and understand the implications of AI, but help them to then recite into a very different type of company and working culture? And that is part of how we've designed the programs. So we have to look at the fundamental skills in education. We have to look at the re-skilling opportunities and the personal responsibility and control in the adult education space. And we have to take a cultural approach at making this shift over time. These are significant moves. We've put a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of time into this. Where is it going to take us, and how are we likely to be successful? Well, the way I would see it is we have done this before. This is not the first time in the 52 years of nationhood where we have had to recalibrate, reconfigure, and re-engineer our economy. We have done it again and again. At the time of independence, when the British pulled out, the marine and offshore industry, the biomedical industry, bringing in the financial services, the move towards the integrated resorts, etc., 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 the knowledge economy. The difference is that we want to do this now faster than we have done before, and set up a system that will continue doing this as our economy develops and matures. But that ability to retool and reconfigure our country, we have demonstrated that we can do this successfully. And we have done so partly because we have very strong relationships and very strong partnerships. Those partnerships are, for example, the tripartism with our workers and with our employers that my colleague Patrick Tay, I'm sure, will be talking about, as a strength to bring the interests of workers, employers, and the country together and be aligned as we pivot from one part of the economy to the other. It is the partnerships that we have developed as an education service, working from the kindergartens all the way up to the adult education space. But it is also the international partnerships that we have developed, as exemplified today with with countries like Switzerland and organizations like the Gallen Symposium, to look at best practices from around the world and see how what we are doing can make sure that we are relevant and integrated and connected to what is happening around the rest of the world. We have taken the same approach every other time that we have engaged in an economic transformation. And this time, in that sense, is no different. But there's lots of work to be done. I'd like to encourage you to think and talk today in the symposium on the basis of what we do next. The end of work as we know it has already arrived. The end of education as we know it, I think, may be starting. What are we going to do next? I have some confidence that we will have a significant, robust, productive outcome. We have done it before in the interest of Singapore, and it rests on each generation recreating their opportunity for the next. And I'm sure this will be a very fruitful and productive symposium. I thank you very much for your attention and for the opportunity to share a few words with you, and I wish you all the best for the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister.
NYAA Council would like to honor our Minister with a token of appreciation. May I now invite Professor Leo Tan, Chairman of National Youth Achievement Award Council, to present a token of appreciation to Dr. Puthucheary. Professor Leo Tan, please. Thank you, Minister and Professor Leo Tan.
Thank you, Minister, for joining us today. Dr. Puthucheary will now take his leave.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the St. Gallen Symposium 2018 Forum. May I now invite Mr. Viswar Sadasavan, former nominated Member of Parliament and Chief Executive Officer of Strategic Moves Private Limited, and moderator for today's forum, as well as our esteemed panelists, to come on stage for the panel discussion. Mr. Sadasavan and panelists, please. It is with pleasure that I hand over the session to Mr. Moderator, Mr. Sadasavan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, my arm is fine. I just want sympathy. Believe it or not, this is from tennis, right? Yeah. Thank you. We're off to a good start. But really, we want to hear from the younger people, Jack. Okay, very quickly, I'd like to introduce our panelists once again. On my right is Patrick. He looks like a boxer. Maybe he was. Huh, Patrick? No, rugby player, okay. Member of Parliament for West Coast GRC, Government Parliamentary Committee Chairman for Manpower, and also Assistant Secretary General of the National Trades Union Congress. Janet, a very dear friend, who claims that she will not get injured the way I do because she doesn't exercise, right? Janet, her part-time work is that she's Vice President of IBM Asia Pacific. Her full-time work is to be on panels like this, right? She's also chairman of the Institute for System Science, and you are the 5th chairman? Seventh? Yeah, yeah. And a great person. She loves being grilled during panel discussions, so don't spare her, right? Warren, he thinks he's a journalist. Right? Now, Warren is a dear friend. He's editor-in-chief of the English, Malay, or editor of everything, is it? But not except Chinese, is it? Yeah, editor-in-chief, SPH, right? Now, I just want to start by saying that I enjoyed the speech by the guest of honor. It was very interesting. Several ideas came out. And really, I think the whole point about education as we know it, the end of education as we know it. It's a very interesting point, I think, to start the discussion, because it has such a strong bearing on everything else. And just a few days ago, I was having a discussion with my daughter, who just finished the IB finals, and we were discussing her future, right? And she was interested in law, she was interested in international relations, all kinds of things, you know. Then I told her, but what about something else, like computers, computer studies, or so on? And what I realized is that she needs to do whatever she wants to do out of interest, because it's not going to have that strong a bearing in her work life 5 years down. That was the conclusion we came to. What is important is, something that the former CEO of Nokia once shared with me. He said, in today's world, it's more important to know a little bit about everything than a lot about one thing. A little bit about everything, you know, and then you can specialize in one or two, but you need to be able to have a spectrum of skill sets. And that's so true today, right? So what sort of education are we talking about? Are we talking about skills per se? Are we talking about qualities like resilience, the nimbleness of the mind, to be able to shift gears fast? Or are we talking about hardcore skill sets? How do we balance it? Is the time over for degrees, masters, PhD? I don't think so. I'm not sure. So maybe we can talk about those things, pick up from what the minister said, and then slowly move on to some of the realities in today's world, right? It obviously has implications on the way we organize ourselves as a society. It has implications on things like even insurance. How do you insure yourself if you don't have a full-time job? The question about Uberization, have you heard of that? Uberization, the gig economy. I mean, today, a lot of people who drive Uber cars used to have full-time jobs. They chose to do this so that they can have more flexible hours. Some of the Uber drivers I met, they say, you know, they do it by choice, even though they get paid less, because they want to spend more time doing some of the things that they never got a chance to do before. Attitudes are changing as well. Character is a very important part of managing this new world that we are living in. Some of those things we can talk about as well. So maybe we can start off by asking each panelist, in 3 minutes flat, if you can, just state one particular perspective that you would like to share. Maybe you'll start with the lady, Janet.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Can you all hear me? I think with or without the mic, I'm fine. Well, I apologize firstly. I got a little bit of a cold, but I couldn't, miss the opportunity to be here. So, apologize for my little bit of a croaky voice. Well,
you sound quite sexy, actually.
Okay, thank you, Viswa. I wonder what he's going to kill me afterwards, I think. Right. No, he said that I claim that I don't get injured because I don't do sports. But I think the only claim that I give is that I'm 39 forever. Okay. All right, so if I may, to get to the, since I'm the only tech guy on this panel, I better address the key question in everybody's mind. Do we still have jobs? Right, because the way the title of the whole symposium is trying to provoke us. Do robots, artificial intelligence, is machine going to take over all of our work and there are no more jobs? So let me maybe start by that first. I'm a veteran in IBM and in the industry. So I have seen the waves of automation and advancement in technology, and we are living in an unprecedented time of rapid, fast pace, more than ever that we have ever seen in terms of advancement of technology. But add to that, a really unprecedented disruption of business models, of value chains, and of course, globalization, urbanization, social commentary, and engagement. So all of these actually create a perfect storm that for the optimists in the room, there are lots and lots of opportunities. Of course, for the pessimists in the room, is that the end of work, right? Now, some of us would love it to be the end of work, right? Then we can all be sipping champagne somewhere or lying in the beach or doing whatever we like. So this morning, sorry, Warren, since you shared this now, I'm going to start there first. Is this morning work or is this morning play, right? So it all depends on the frame of mind, all right? So man plus machine in IBM, we believe is equal to intelligence, all right? That we should be leveraging, generations and generations we have seen, how automation have actually changed work. But in fact, I would almost submit to you, create new work. So a hypothesis, I would almost say is quite real. There will be some job replacement, all right, because of the advancement and the capabilities that machine and artificial intelligence and robotics bring to bear. That is going to be only a small percentage, all right? And I would almost submit to us that for that small percentage, we might actually be quite happy that the machine has taken over. I will give you one example. When my brother moved into his new apartment, and I bought him this thing called the iRobot. Anybody has an iRobot? The iRobot is something that actually cleans up, sweeps up, the room automatically, all pre-timed, and he knows how to go back home. Home meaning, lock yourself and charge ready for next morning. He told me that was the best gift ever, all right? Because nobody likes to go and take the broom or even the vacuum cleaner and go do it yourself. So for those kind of job replacement, I think we will all say hallelujah, all right? Now, we believe at the same time that all the work and the jobs that we do today will change. That one is 100% for sure. How it will change? What will it change into? How many will it multiply? What kind of productivity? All that, now I give my optimistic view. I feel in just the 35 years in the industry that I've seen, depending on the human spirit, which I believe is very high, it will actually perhaps create even more work for more people, but in different ways. All right, I just give you one example of, at least when IBM's artificial intelligence, which we call cognitive computing, and the name is Watson, played the game Jeopardy in 2011. All right, and you all know the US game Jeopardy, which means that the system has to learn everything, read everything in the Britannica, in Wikipedia, whatever, any subject. And you got to be fast and you got to be right. We beat the machine, beat the champions, the world human champions, in that game. And lo and behold, I would like to believe that, hey, the whole applicability of artificial intelligence in the world we live in today, whereby data is everywhere. All kinds of data that is structured, data that is unstructured, data that is out there supplied by everybody on Facebook, on the internet, and data that is, papers written, medical reports written, journals written, all of that. How can any human, no matter how smart you are, read and digest all of that and make suppositions and therefore create better solutions or make the better decisions in whichever field? Very tough, but with the system, all right, that opened the eyes of everyone. And the first area that we applied cognitive or artificial intelligence to is in oncology advisor. All right, we got the MSK, which the Sloan Kettering School of Cancer Research came to IBM. The best experts taught the system, all right, and now that system is an advisor to doctors all over the world. All right, give you one very stark example. In India, there's only one oncologist to 1,600 potential cancer patients of all varying degrees. Not that, and they can't all go to, there will definitely, in the population so big, there will definitely be a certain percentage who might need MSK's kind of capabilities. On the other extreme, you can't have so many, if you have only one oncologist to 1,600, how are you going to get, all of the, patients taken care of and diagnosed appropriately? So the Watson Oncology Advisor that was developed with MSK is now, you can consider it a second opinion for the patients, a panel of doctors, for that one oncologist, and as well as a trainer for the medical school. So you think of that, I would suppose that in whatever expertise that we have, we can scale that expertise with the help of machine. Now, of course, there are plenty of other things that we got to consider about, but I would just like to say that man plus machine can give us new intelligence that actually can scale the expertise to create perhaps more work.
Well, thank you very much. And a lot of studies have highlighted that there'll be a net loss of jobs. But the Boston Consulting Group interestingly said that there's going to be a net 5% increase in jobs, right? So it depends on which way you look at it. But what is important is that we have to recognize that while this is beneficial, broadly speaking, there is going to be a segment of society, those at the bottom of the pyramid, depending on the shape of the pyramid, who may be unskillable, because we're talking about skills, we're talking about skills future, but when the assumption is you already have some skills, and then you're going to reskill. But what about those who do not have those skills? What do we do with them? Do they have access to this intelligence that you're talking about? And that's really the kind of question that I put to you, Patrick. Being a unionist, being in charge of the Government Parliamentary Committee for Manpower, what do we do with people who, in every society, Singapore included, Switzerland included, who are the bottom of the pyramid? How do they cope with this new world we are talking about?
It may be the end of work, but you will never be the end of workers. I speak as a unionist. I think I just want to relate a story that happened to me. 3 weeks ago, just 3 weeks ago, my family and I have 3 kids and a wife, so 5 of us. We had not decided what Christmas presents to give each other 5 days before Christmas. So we panicked, and then lo and behold, we were just glossing through the internet and found one very nice new toy, which 5 of us agreed to. It was the latest VR goggles from Lenovo, and we all became Jedis overnight. So we ordered it 5 days before Christmas, got it delivered to us, and we didn't exchange presents. All 5 of us became Jedis overnight. And for the first time in 25 years, I managed to slay Darth Maul. For the first time in 35 years, I managed to slay Darth Vader. And the guy who delivered it from Ninja Van, delivered the box. We had a very nice, it was a very beautiful box with a beacon in there, with a nice VR set of goggles, and really futuristic, and with a lightsaber. For first time, we really enjoyed ourselves and had a good family bonding time, and really loved our Christmas presents collectively. Why I'm sharing this story? If you look at the whole chain of process, from us ordering it online, to the guy delivering that nice big present to us, and I was examining the VR goggles, the beacon, the lightsaber. Although it's a toy, actually, interestingly, it provoked some of the discussions we have today. Firstly, if you look at it, how did we order it? It was online. Back on my mind, in fact, last year, if you look at retail, it's taking a big hit. Retail workers are facing the crunch because many of us are purchasing things online. Besides purchasing things online, from a retail angle, we paid by credit card online as well. So e-payments, e-transactions, that's what's pervading the market. Third, this is what talks about the gig economy and possibly some of these more vulnerable workers. The person who delivers it to me, on a Ninja Van, my best guess is he earns about $5 to $10 per delivery. That's the ground sensing I get when I speak to some of them. And also the goggles itself. What's so unique about this set of goggles? The glass that's on the goggle, the technology behind it, the beacon, the lightsaber, goes to show that despite all these new technologies, new toys, we still need people to manufacture those items. We still need people to plan the app behind launching this VR goggles. And if you look at the glass, we need people to be able to manufacture these high-end, what you call gorilla glasses. So again, the whole value chain has transformed, like what Janet shared. And it's exciting times. And beyond that, in fact, just last year, I was visiting Capgemini's Applied Innovation Exchange, and they were using similar VR goggles to help in doing a few series of tasks for jobs as well as for training. Jobs, some of the surgeries that people do now use VR goggles to do it remotely. Some of the more riskier things that we need to do on board floating oil platforms, at risky environments where we expose the elements to danger and risk, can now there's a new order, and you know, can now execute some of these jobs through VR technology, augmented reality, and again, some of the training that we are doing to help workers upskill, reskill. Now we are not subject to the weather. You know, bus drivers now don't need to literally be on a bus. They can go to the bus academy and go on a kind of like a virtual training environment to be able to simulate actual real work scenarios, to be able to pick up new trainings. So again, it may be end of work, but I don't think so. I agree with Janet. You'll be new jobs, but it also requires new skills, new training, a new breed of workers to be able to meet some of these challenges. Yeah.
So, Warren, I mean, you've been a journalist for a very long time. Do you feel that there's a palpable shift in the attitude towards work among Singaporeans? I mean, you have written commentaries on things like that. Now, because at the end of the day, the government, society can provide opportunities, you can come up with programs, but there's an observation that people are reticent. People are not willing to go out there and say, help me, I need help, you know. I mean, I've experienced it before. I mean, there are really a lot of help programs. You go, you knock the door and say, look, we are here to help you. They don't want to open the door, they're not interested. Now, is there a problem? Because you can have, on the one hand, there may be a deficit of programs to help people who need help. On the other hand, people may not actually want help, even though they need help. Do you see that there is this issue?
I think it's not so much that people are reticent, it's just that there's so much uncertainty about where the industries are going, what jobs are going to be available in the future. And I'd like to suggest that the whole nature of what we consider work and jobs and leisure is changing. I mean, you started off with a slightly provocative remark about me thinking I'm a journalist. And that's true, because when I started off as a journalist, what it entailed being a journalist was writing a report and getting it into the newspaper. That's no longer what being a journalist is about today. Today, I'm expected to blog, to tweet, to go on forums, to come to panel discussions like this. It's all considered part of being a journalist. Yeah. Is it work? Is it leisure? It's a bit of both. If I ask all of you in the audience, how many of you are here because this is part of work for you? Show of hands. Okay. How many of you are here? The professor says it's work. Yeah. How many of you are here because it's leisure? It's fun to come to a discussion like that. The same set of people.
So it means work is fun.
And for some of us, it's neither here nor there, or it's somewhere in between. You know, Janet's a professional panel member, as you say. That's probably partly work, partly leisure as well. And I think that's the challenge we have of going beyond work, because what we used to consider work may become leisure, and what we considered leisure may become work. And it's also education. I mean, just take one very simple and concrete example. Let's say driving. Some of us drove here today. Some people, as you grow up, you learn to drive. It's a skill that's important to have. But we're not far off from the point in the next decade or so where nobody will need to drive. And a young person growing up will wonder why his mother or father is telling, please go and get a driving license. Because you press a button, an app, a car will come to you, and you'll get from point A to B. And we're at that point in the transformation of industry that I think if you go back in history, in the early 19th century, if you were a young man growing up, your father would say, please learn to ride a horse. Today, nobody rides a horse, except for people who've got too much time and too much money with nothing else to do. And we may well get to the point in the future where the only people who drive are those with too much time and too much money, you know. So whole industries are going to be changed as a result. Driving, delivery will become something that nobody needs to do. With robotics, manufacturing may be something that we can all produce as much with 3D printing. So whole industries will be changed. With AI, the job of a journalist and, God forbid, editors will also may be outsourced to these robots. So what we do for work and what we do for leisure will then have to change. And this became very clear to me when I was involved in a major retrenchment exercise last year. Some of you know about it. Janet certainly does. And as I engaged with the people who were losing their jobs, and I spent a lot of time talking to them, I think 3 big questions came up to me. One was, first, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to put food on the table? How am I going to pay for my kids to go to school and my parents to go to hospital? One big reason why we work. And the second was, what am I going to do with all that time? How am I going to fill up my day? And the third was, even if I could do the first 2, what's going to give me meaning and purpose in my life? And I think those are the 3 big questions we're all going to have to ask when we think about the future of what comes after work. You know? Because we can solve all the problems of producing all the material goods we want. You know? Take agriculture. In the past, before the Industrial Revolution, many of us would be working to produce the food that we ate. Today, the breakfast that you ate, none of you had a direct hand in producing, but that doesn't mean we starve. And going forward, just because we can produce all the goods that we need to produce, doesn't mean we will have enough to keep us all occupied, to allocate it in a way that we all are comfortable with. So those issues don't go away. We will continue to have to figure out the answers to those questions. And my sense is that the challenge for all of us as parents, as students, as educators, is to find new answers to those questions. What is it that we are going to be doing today that's going to constitute adding value, filling up your day and giving meaning and purpose to our lives? That's really the questions we have to answer when we grapple with this whole big issue of beyond the future of work.
It's a great point, you know. And so what we're really talking about so far is work has been such an important part of life. Even before you start working, you're working towards work, right? I mean, seriously. In Singapore, education is a means to an end. It's a means to getting a job. I mean, that's been the conventional thinking. It's almost in our DNA. And then when you start working, you want to move up the ladder. So work has been such an important part of our life. For many of us, it actually defines our life, defines our identity, you know. So imagine when that is taken out of the equation. That's the point you're making. It's a very important point. It has a hugely disruptive effect on us, a certain emptiness, maybe less meaningful, because our entire life has been so defined by this thing called work in the conventional sense. So what happens? I mean, my wife, I think, will go mad if I stop working.
You might have 2 broken arms.
Yeah, 2. Yeah, this was caused by my wife, by the way. You know, so I think you've raised some important points. Before I throw it open to the floor, could I have a 1-word response from each of you? It is going to be a brave new world, you know, and we are certainly going to revisit it again and again, right? What is that one quality that a young person needs to have to be able to not just manage it, but embrace it? Not manage it, but embrace this brave new world with all its uncertainty, with all its reality. What is that? And only 1 word. I'd like to hear from each one of you. What is that one quality that the person needs to be able to embrace this? Patrick.
I think having engaged many
one
workers
word.
and stuff.
Politicians.
I just have 1 word, is mindset.
Okay, thanks.
My word would be purpose.
I would say nimbleness.
Okay, there you have it. Okay, using that as a starting point, I don't know what these words really mean, but it's up to us to interpret it. Okay? Now, I'm going to throw it open to the floor. I'd like the first 3 questions to come from young people. And by that, John, that's not you. Okay? Ambassador, that's not you. Young people, okay? So I'd like to hear from young people. Yes. Hands up, please. Yes. 1, 2. Anybody else? 3. 1, 2, 3. Yes? Please use the mic. We need you to use the mic because we are recording this. First question over here, please. She's asked the first question, and then to you.
Hi, my name's Natasha. I'm just going to try to play the activist here. Sorry if it offends anyone.
Could you
Yes.
say where you're from? What do you do?
I used to be an art student. I used to be an art student from NUS.
Art student from NUS.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Go ahead, your question.
Okay, so it seems like what we've discussed here really, it's what Vishwa brought up, the whole income inequality, possibly rising income inequality. It doesn't seem like it's, like there's a plan to address it. So basically, when it comes to automation, we know that it will lead to income inequality because all the jobs that, let's say, Lenovo, when you talk about the VR goggles, all the jobs that it creates, it really benefits people who already have the money to buy these things. And secondly, automation does benefit those who already have capital goods, who are already in charge of data or have the money. So my point is that, because I have a brother who's in the F&B industry, but he's not like a manager. So to me, it's quite personal in a sense that I think what's going to happen to him, because I think one of the studies, if I'm not wrong, it's also BCG or McKinsey. It said that about 75% of the F&B activities, they can be automated. So he's like cutting up stuff, cutting up fruits and veggies, and I'm imagining a world where he wouldn't have that job. So that's my question as well. And secondly, when it comes to Lenovo, using Patrick's example, when we buy the VR goggles, it creates jobs for Ninja Van, but Ninja Van is also, it's part of the gig economy, interestingly, and the thing about the gig economy, it doesn't provide any social safety nets. Actually, insurance is always not provided. Second point. Third point is that when we buy something overseas, we don't really think about the people who are making them. So in factories in China, actually Lenovo hires children, and they recently caught children as...
That could be libelous.
Yeah. No, as in
Yeah,
I mean, according to...
So we don't know. We don't know how it's produced.
Yeah, we
Okay.
don't know how it's produced, and we don't know how to control who makes our goods that we buy and we enjoy. And I think it's yeah.
Okay,
that's my,
good.
That's my point.
So, good questions. Maybe we can get a quick response from the panel. Yes? Patrick?
Maybe I start since she mentioned about the goggles. Yeah, I think if you look at Singapore, our workforce is shrinking quite rapidly. More people exiting the workforce. We have a low fertility rate, unfortunately, something like 1.24. So we have lesser people coming in. So we have a very tight workforce in Singapore. And it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter. So in Singapore, we don't have natural resources, we don't have a hinterland, we don't have a lot of things, except we have human capital in each and every one of us here. So I think a lot of resources are being made to not just create new jobs, but also I think a lot of effort is going to be made creating quality jobs. I think the key word is quality jobs. Yes, some of these low-end manufacturing will be done by other not so expensive countries. Over here, we are trying to create value-added quality jobs. And that's what we're doing. If you look at some of the industries today, particularly manufacturing has powered our economy very, very well the last year. I think the bulk of the growth was from manufacturing. I think one key thing is how can we segue people into these quality jobs and how to prepare them for it. Yeah. For example, the financial
So I guess, Patrick,
yeah.
the question is, what are we going to do with people who, at the bottom of the pyramid, who are displaced? I think that's the thrust of Natasha's concern, and I see quite a lot of people nodding their heads. So I think there is that concern, what's going to happen to these people? Not so much the young people, but what's going to happen to the people who are in the market who are going to be displaced because they're doing very low-end work. Are there plans to help them in some way?
Yes, so at the tripartite level, together with Labour Movement and our tripartite partners, I think in various industries, 23 sectors in fact, helping workers in those sectors, in those 23 different clusters or sectors, to upskill and let them know where are the future job positions, what are the future skills, what are the in-demand skills, so that we can help them, partner them, either if they are professionals, PMEs, help them through professional conversion training. It's not easy, but every starfish counts. And we have been actively on the ground, helping not just the low-wage workers, the rank and file workers, but also the professionals, managers, and executives. Because if you look at the manpower statistics, most of the people who are retrenched, in fact about 70% of them, are professionals, managers, executives, and technicians. So how can we better prepare them for some of these new roles? So a lot of the institutions that we're working, for example, like in the financial sector, gone are the teller jobs. So how are we, upskilling them? So we're really embracing professional conversion, embracing some of these upskilling and training. Yeah, it may sound like a bit passé, training, I think, but it's still relevant today because we need to segue them in those growth areas. I think that's the biggest challenge. And of course, later we can talk a bit about the gig economy, ninja van, and the vulnerability, because I do agree, and I worry that with the shared economy, with platform workers, and with Uberization, we are going to see a new wave of potentially low-wage workers.
Oh, and also the point about lack of insurance, medical coverage, because these people will not have the medical coverage. Of course, we have MediShield Life and so on, but I think these are things that we need to think about. Warren?
No, I'd just like to challenge the point that it's only the lower-end workers who are going to be hit by automation and the transformation in industry. Because if you look at whole areas like radiologists or legal researchers or journalists, there's a fascinating website created by the BBC and Oxford University on how likely is your job to be replaced by a robot. You should check it out. I went on it and I typed in media editor, and thankfully it said 8%. It was 285 out of 366 jobs. Business leader, even less likely. It didn't have a category for media commentator, but with your youthful good looks, you're fine, I think. But I think the point there is that this is a transformation that is going to affect almost everybody. And the hard part for all of us, Vishwa, you were talking about what do you advise your daughter? And I actually got an email similar to asking the same question from a good friend who had read about the retrenchments in our industry and said, should I encourage a young person to go into the media? Or is she better off preparing for a profession, the traditional professions of being an accountant or a lawyer or one of those where the jobs might be more secure? But if you think hard about it, it's not necessarily so that those jobs are going to be more secure. And maybe the question that the minister was asking us to think about, the future of education, relates to that. Because if I was having to advise someone young, I would say the most valuable education you could have would be the broadest one that creates that nimbleness of mind, that helps you get the right values, the right attitudes to learning, the right ability to change. That, good understanding of what it's like to be, what it means to be human, that could be the most powerful education we could give our young people today.
Thank you.
If I can add to that as well, is the T-shaped professional, if you all have heard it, the kind of skills and competency that everybody should have in terms of communication, broad-based, everything, it still applies no matter, which part of the disruption curve you're on, but there's also that deep skill. That means in some ways, yes, I don't know which was the CEO, which CEO you mentioned just now, Viswa. Okay, it is, okay, so, Nokia. All right. Okay, so, but key thing is you have to be deep.
He was disrupted.
Yeah, right, you have to be deep. All right. The only difference is in the past, you keep the same tea for a longer time. In today's environment, your tea has to change all of the time. And that's why I totally agree with what Warren said just now about, the question that was posed just now, if I give a different take, because you heard them all, I would say compassion. All right, if people are selfish, if the bosses only want to make money for themselves and they only take care of the higher rank and always think that the leaders are the only ones who actually do the real work and produce the real stuff, that's where our problem is. Why do you think there was a Wall Street, whatever you call it, there was a revolution on Wall Street, right? Because the key thing, pardon? Occupy Wall Street. I only know it's some revolution of some sort. All right. But I guess the key thing is this is the right room to raise the question. Because it's no point asking, hey, what happens to all of them? It is something that we each can do. Because some bosses are already in the room. We've got to look. The income disparity, it is not automated. It's man-made. All right, it's man-made. No machine tells me that you're going to earn this much or that much. It's all man-designed. So men and women, did we design it to be equitable? All right, so where is that compassion in our, how shall we say, in our workforce? Now, for the young people, I know that many young people, in a way, have illusion, right, about what's happening in industry. And therefore, there are many of you who are actually preparing your skills to go start a business. Not bad at all. But just remember, the same question that you've asked applies. All right? So that's one part of my answer. The second part of my answer is still compassion. All right? Go do something about it. All right? The social sector is also work. All right? It may be paid social sector work. It may be half-paid social sector work, and I know when you go into social sector, it's like you straight away take a pay cut, all right? Or it could be totally voluntarism. So if you think about work in a broad sense, all right, we do paid work and we do unpaid work. Lo and behold, your mothers who stay home to look after you, make sure, ferry you around, cook your food, is that work or no work? It's plenty of work. So I would say, it is something that we can all structure that social compact to really, solve this problem. And just to give some credit to, what Patrick and the guys in MOM have done, there are two categories of workers, right, that they have found to be the lowest rank, all right? Lowest rank in income pay, but to be very frankly, we all better kowtow to them because without them, we will be living in a rubbish bin. Cleaners and gardeners, all right, like security guards, all right? They have actually, in some ways broken the whatever ceiling you call it, that they have actually created a minimum wage. All right, so small steps, but definitely going forward. But I believe the question I would like to ask is it something we're waiting for someone else to do, somebody called government, or is it something that each one of us can do something about?
I think, as you said, everyone has a role in this, right? Government included. Now, I'm going to change the rhythm of this, right? We're going to go for much shorter answers so that we can have a lot more questions. This is what I suggest. The gentleman in red, could you stand up? And stand up. And I'd like you to have an engagement with the panel. So it's not just you ask a question, the answer. If you don't like the answer, say so. Yeah. Because, you don't want the panelists to just get away with it. So ask the question and debate with them. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Marcus. I'm a science student at NUS. And the question I ask is, are there any professional jobs which are likely to be taken over by machines?
Okay, very quick, short comments, so you can keep it going.
My short answer is whatever that can be robotized, mechanized, or digitalized, will be robotized, mechanized, and digitalized. Simple.
All right, thank you.
Good enough, yes, it's true. But will it change? You will have to there will be new jobs that will have to design and teach those systems, whether they are robots or artificial intelligence, what to do and how to do it.
What was the reason why you asked your question?
Okay, because you see, for example, a certain job that can be taken over by robots, right? If it can actually happen, wouldn't it mean that no one will have to study anymore since you don't need anything to do the job?
That should have been your question. Okay, now how would you respond? Warren, how do you respond? Do they need to study anymore? Of course, we're asking this question in a university setting. Yeah.
I think you will still have to study because you may want to study, because you will want to read the best books that have been written through the course of history. You'll want to know what your fellow students think and what's shaping the way they think. You may want to study to help you make a decision on which house to buy or which country to live in or which person to marry. So you will still have to study and read and think. I don't think those things will change. But how you use it might change. I mean, not so sure. I mean, you may want to test yourself on an exam. How well do you understand the subject? But I just want to pick up a point Janet was making about social service work. It may well come to a point when those are the most highly sought after jobs. I mean, one of the most sought after skills today is plumbing. Try finding a plumber. He'll tell you, I'll come at this time, please be at home, and my charges are going to be $200 an hour. Fitness trainers. These are guys who used to run around and train, and they were enjoying doing their runs, and today they're highly sought after. And if you are a very good fitness trainer, you can command a tremendous premium. That doesn't mean he doesn't have to learn. He's learning different skills. And he's using the skills he has, which may have been his leisure, for work. So
you got the answer. You have to study. Okay, and but I think what the point we are making is you got to study differently. Yeah, it's a new environment. The way you study has to change, but study, yes.
I think this one can just add 2 long points. Yeah.
Too long? No, short.
Short. Okay. Maybe just state one point first. I think because now everyone is on a very level playing field today. You know, in terms of knowledge, anything that you know, I will also know. Anything that I know, you may also know, because all you need to do is just Google it. So knowledge is everywhere, and everyone is on the same level of knowledge. But the only difference is, like what Warren alluded to, the application and analysis. I think these 2 A's, the application and analysis, is where, if you see increasingly, I don't know, my Sec 2 son tells me, they no longer just memorize, tons of materials. He's asked questions to debate why you think it's this and why it's not this. And this weekend's assignment for him was why McDonald's and not KFC? Yeah, which is better? So, okay, yeah, I know what they sell, but so I think the application and analysis will be the new thing that will differentiate us today in the way we learn and the way we educate.
Yeah. Thank you. And if I may, there was a question from behind someone. You got a mic? And if I can, thank you. Gentlemen in red, you can sit down. Marcus, thank you. Now, before that, just one more point to add to what Patrick said. You know, this whole notion of deductive reasoning, I think it's a very, very important skill set today, because deductive reasoning allows us to join the dots, because we're going to be facing a deficit of knowledge all the time. So those are the kind of skills that are going to be very, very useful for us.
Right. If I can just add to your point, the new word is called insights. When we were growing up, okay, talking about the first 3 rows and myself, when we were growing up, knowledge is power, right? Remember? So people don't, when you are the guy who know, because you definitely did more work trying to find out the information. Then it became, information. That means you take the knowledge and you actually be able to connect the dots. If I can just add on, Viswa, one more other thing, which is, I guess, something that I hope the young people will really apply, something that inherently is already a part of you, which is creating insights. That means you have an opinion, right? That means it's not just the knowledge, you're prepared to share it, you change it into expertise, and you're prepared to also have the moral obligation of providing opinions and accept to be wrong if you are wrong.
Right, thank you. Yes, gentlemen, behind there.
Hi, my name is Ryan. I'm a business school alumni. My question is, how do you teach nimbleness, or how do you teach purpose?
How do you teach how to breathe, almost? Now, remain standing. I'd like you to engage. Now, I'd like to see whether there's anyone else with a question. Yes, please give her a mic. You got a mic? Okay, you want to stand up? Let's have a multilateral discussion. What's your question?
My question doesn't really have anything to do with his. So,
Doesn't matter.
would it be okay if I asked it separately though?
No, we'd like you to ask now so that we can have a multilateral
But
discussion.
I thought you would be giving me options.
Yeah. No, just ask the question. Let's keep it going.
Okay, my name is Kit. I'm an NUS undergraduate. So my question has to do with something that Ms. Janet mentioned just now about compassion. So I'm a political science student, and I see that you're the chairperson of the Institute of Systems Science. So in a sense, we have a shared interest in systems. So you mentioned something just now about how everybody, in a sense, everybody in society has kind of like an equal role in displaying and expressing compassion into making sure that like nobody falls through the net in society. And I mean, we've all heard, that argument made before, but I would kind of like to challenge that in a sense, because by saying that, it takes the pressure off the systems themselves to be at the vanguard, to be pushing the envelope in terms of how we can look after people better. So my question has to do with, like, for example, with big, MNCs like IBM. Are there any sort of measures, policies that have been implemented that smaller firms, or not really smaller, but like newer firms like Uber and Grab, for example, can take on board in order to ensure that people working in the gig economy are not unduly, put under financial duress or like put in a difficult situation? Yeah, because, and where this question is kind of coming from is recently, for example, people have been worried about automation, and people like Bill Gates have come out and said that, companies who want to like wholesale automate an entire factory, they should be paying a robot tax. And this tax should be going towards, funding people while they're in the process of getting reskilled. So that's my question. Like, has
So funding people who have been displaced as well.
Sorry?
Funding people who have been displaced, who've been affected.
So have there been any kind of policies that have been implemented, for example, by IBM or like within your own experience, like at that level of, industry and corporation? Has there anything been done?
Okay, good. So I'd like the panel to respond to either question. Up to you. On nimbleness. How do you teach nimbleness? Maybe we can ask Mr. Nimble. Okay, so you want to... Can you nimbly respond to that?
I don't think you can teach nimbleness or purposeness. I think it's about cultivating it. It's about nurturing it. And the answer I gave to my friend, as you would give to your daughter, was let the person pursue what he or she is interested in, because that's the best way you're going to be able to nurture that interest. And I've always believed that a good liberal arts education is a good preparation for any job, more so than a specific narrow one, and especially in these days, because it teaches you to think of other views, to be exposed to a different way of looking at life, to seek out information and to be able to think about how to process it. And I think you can't teach that, but the process of going through it cultivates it and nurtures it.
And if I could quickly add to that, allow people to fall early in life. When you go to the playground, typically you see the kid, the 3-year-old kid, with the helper on tow to make sure that he doesn't fall. The truth of the matter is, if you learn how to break your fall early in life, the chances of you breaking your bones are less. But if the first time you fall is when you are my age, you really break your bones. See, the art of learning how to break your fall. Kids fall naturally and learn to pick up. But we need to allow them the opportunity to fall. But if we protect them so much, you're not going to be resilient and certainly not nimble. So I'd just like to add that as well. We can't be overly precious in the way we raise our children, our young. We need to give greater exposure at risk.
So just to add on Viswa and Warren's point, I believe in agility. Nimbleness and agility quite synonymous. I think agility is not just the experiential learning process. There's no textbook that will tell you how to be more agile. Yeah, it's all your mindsets, it's all your experiences. But at the same time, also agility and nimbleness from a worker perspective. We're looking at what Janet shared earlier about T-shaped skills. But I'm provoking you to think, beyond T-shape to a pie shape, not just one deep skill, but two deep skills to weather any storms. So many of these, the horizontal part of the T, some of these skills will make you more agile, the right mindsets, the right attitudes. I think we'll ask any big employer, ask Janet, employers are looking for attitude, not beyond attitude, attitude, and also the ability to move across, move into, move up, move down. I think that's agility in what I think it is.
Right, thanks. Are you comfortable with the responses? Would you like to respond?
Can I add to that answer as well? Maybe because you asked not only about agility, but about purpose. All right, so if I can just say, let's try to be the whole human being again. The whole human being. Intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. All right, I think if I know this is a deep topic, but if we begin to be whole again, that's where you will find the center of your purpose. All right, and true, most of us may live our whole lives, seeking for a purpose, right? But you know it when you know it. And in fact, I feel that your generation are more purposeful than us. Okay, I'm 39 forever, not quite your generation, but your generation, if you think about how many of the young people want to choose the things that they want to do, they always talk about the purpose. They want to be able to have an impact in society, contribute to something in society. That is actually very encouraging. And it could be because you are fortunate to have grown up in an environment and in an economic situation because of the hard work of your forefathers, your parents, grandparents, and everybody, such that you can speak like that. And we hope that you continue to keep that passion going. All right. And agility, to be frank, in the tech world, there is something called agile. All right. And I know, how come you can train agile? Actually, you can. All right. Because one of the key things about being agile is to listen and to have empathy. All right. I know, doesn't sound like these two words have got anything to do with agile. But if we listen more and we have true empathy, you will be agile. All right, then I better answer.
Okay, hold on. Do you want to respond? Are you comfortable with the responses? Is there something you want to add?
So I'm contented with the ideal. I guess the less comfortable part is in the application of it. Do we know enough about what is it to be whole human being? Or can we ever agree about that to actually implement a change in education?
That one is very deep, no? I think we don't have time now, but later I think you can interact. But I think it's a very important question, and I'm glad that you are soul-searching and asking these questions, and I hope we'll have a lot more opportunities to ask. This discussion is to provoke thought, is to make us ask questions that are inconvenient, but it's not necessarily to provide all the answers. We can't, right? So I'm glad you've raised the question. And I'm glad for the responses. So thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Janet, please.
Okay, so I tackle the young lady's question. All right, so when I said that we all have responsibility, I did preface that with people in this room. We are privileged. We are privileged. Everyone in this room, all of you, whether young or a little bit not so young, we are all privileged. And therefore, frankly, we have more responsibility. It is not like equal responsibility. But all I'm trying to say about equal responsibility is I want young people not to be, how shall we say, there sometimes there are trends, all right, that you want to blame other people. It's always easy to say, hey, the government is not doing enough. Oh, the education system is not doing enough. The who and who all not doing enough. I just don't want the young people to go away with that kind of an idea. That's why I say we all have equal responsibility. But our responsibility is different from that cleaner or the security guard or the domestic helper or even, the construction worker out there. Different. We are more privileged. So if you have been given more is expected of you. So that is my first clarification, and I'm glad you asked that question so that I had the chance to clarify. Second, therefore, companies, MNCs, big companies, actually any company, because you can be a company and an enterprise, you're already privileged to actually have the resources and the means to actually create something. So we have to be responsible. So in fact, in Davos earlier in the year, my IBM chairman CEO, Ginny Rometty, all right, her speech at Davos was about the social responsibility of companies as we move into this so-called artificial intelligence, robotic, high digital disruption era. All right, when we say social responsibility, then it qualifies everything that you said just now. Is how we produce and create the products for ethical purpose, for ethical use, and how we bring all of our employees along and our customers and our partners along. But there is no freeloader. So this one, maybe she didn't say it, okay? So I am giving my personal opinion. Since I dare say just now that with all the knowledge, all the wisdom so-called we have been endowed with, and we have the opportunity to learn from one another, I must have the moral obligation also to speak my mind. I feel that the key thing is we should not have freeloaders. That means we should not be always thinking, oh, who is going to give me some handouts? If I lose my job, someone must look after me. All right? Yes, the society must have some level of safety nets. The society, which means everyone, must have that compassion to want to give and help and pull along. But you know, I mean, to be honest, no one owes us a living. We've got to wake up each morning and be purpose-driven to say, I want to do something to create value and make something of this air that I breathe on this earth.
Well, very difficult to punctuate in. Okay, yes.
Maybe if I could reiterate.
Yes,
my
please,
question
please.
and make it
Go ahead.
more concise and precise. So the question that I was actually asking is, yes, we understand that each individual has a responsibility for that. We all have our own lives to live and we should not be freeloaders. But in the case of an individual, for example, who worked in a factory or who worked in a field, like even if you are, say, a journalist whose job is at risk of being replaced by AP, which might be driven by AI, developed, for example, by IBM, should IBM, for example, not to, you know, stir anything up on stage. Yeah,
It's okay, you're fine to stir
for
it.
example, should IBM then, as a corporation who is, you know, part of that chain, be required to compensate the individual in some way whilst they get back on their feet? This person is not a freeloader. This person has been made obsolete through no fault of their own. They've been put into a world where humans need not apply.
Yeah. The earlier quotation by Bill Gates, that's the point she's making. There's a certain responsibility to take care of those who may inadvertently have been affected by your policies.
So maybe I respond first. And we'll always be able to jabber because after all, I must declare my
Okay,
interest.
but I need to ask you all to keep it short so that we can have a couple more questions. A bit long already, yeah? Okay. Okay, her question is the responsibility.
No, so that's why. Social responsibility, I mean, being corporate social responsibility doesn't always mean giving out money. I mean, when I say handout, it sounds like it's always, you know, money. All right, we've got to have that social responsibility to get your employees as well as people who are affected in the industry to always reskill. Right? I think that is what is a very key thing. You do not wait till the fella get displaced. You should be already working on how you're going to get people to move to the future by providing them the appropriate training and equipping them with the skills. But I'm sure you heard of this saying, you can bring the horse to the water, but you can't make the horse drink.
Okay, now Janet, I'd like to put it to Patrick to answer that question because the government in Singapore has various schemes to actually compensate the individual as he's going for training. Am I right?
That's right. I think it's not new. We have skills development fund many years ago.
Could I ask a quick question that would possibly, you know, tie into the answer that you would give? So the government does kind of compensate workers that are made obsolete. But at the same time, whilst these workers are still in a field, you know, that is at risk possibly of automation, that's been identified to be at risk, they would naturally kind of be encouraged to be put through reskilling. Yeah. Who pays for that?
Yeah. Most of it, government. Yeah, today, because of Skills Future and many of the industry transformation maps that we're rolling out. Yes, so actually most of the tab is picked by the government. I would just like to add on.
But actually, when you say government, it's us, it's taxpayers. That goes back to the compassion. If we as taxpayers object to using that money, then there's no compassion.
And to pile on, is it the taxpayers or is it corporate taxpayers?
Could be both. I would dearly love to tax IBM to pay for it.
But I agree with you that increasingly we cannot just look at where the job gains are. Yeah, we've been focusing a lot on where the jobs, the new jobs are, the jobs gains are, and also where the losses are, where the retrenchments are going. But increasingly, I think just 2 days ago at the Future Job Skills and Training Forum, I think one of the key takeaways was we need to get every employer to take a closer look at where the jobs at risk are.
Okay, I'd like to end this discussion here so that we can have at least 2 more questions before we wrap. I like this format where you are engaging, all right? But I need to emphasize that we need to keep responses short so we can have more questions. We have, can we have a slight extension? 10 minutes, is it okay?
Viswa, just on the point of robo-tax that the young lady asked, I wrote a blog about this last June. Yeah, so we had engaged, when I was in Geneva, Switzerland for the ILC, we had a big engagement on this. I wrote a blog on it. Maybe you can... thank you.
Superb, superb. So you know what? Please continue this engagement outside. I think that's the spirit of this. I've been given permission to extend by 10 minutes, Ken. Thank you. So we'll have a few more questions, and I'd like all of you to engage. We'll let an older person ask. Yes, Jack?
Thank you very much.
But keep it short.
Yes. So one of the missing thing in this discussion is character building. Because we cannot...
Character building. Okay.
Yeah. One thing for sure is we cannot be better robots. If you go to the examination hall with the AI, he get 100 marks, you get less. You go to interview, he gets the job, you don't. So what is reality is that we need to build to become better human beings rather than better robots. In order to be better human beings, character building becomes very important. And this is where the big misunderstanding is. I go to MOE and talk to the director of character building. He's here. And he says, all is taken care. Look at my PowerPoint, 21st century education. Don't worry, everything is fine. In reality, when you go to the principal, they go worried. Because it is a fear-based education. Every day the child is afraid. When a child is afraid, he cannot learn love. We have to convert from fear-based to love-based. He's been tortured. You don't get the grades, you don't get the job, you can't buy a HDB flat, you want to clean toilet, la. And then every year we have some suicides. Exam result come out, they jump off the building because they couldn't face the world.
Okay, so
we got to change that by a
character building.
But by converting learning to be enjoyable and love-based. But while they are saying that, they are making the pressure for the exam.
Okay.
So there's an oxymoron educational system.
Fine. So point made. Puvan, I don't need you to respond because you'll be too adversarial. But I think the broader point, I mean, apart from the specific statements made about the Education Ministry, the broader point about character building needs to be emphasized because it is a definite correlation to resilience, to nimbleness, and so on. So point taken, we'll get a response soon. I'll take 2 more questions. 1, 2. Yes. The rest of you, please, it's not at the end of the conversation, you can continue later. 1, 2, and I'll allow that lady, because you look very, very sad. Okay, so quick questions, please, yes.
My name is Xiang Nan, I'm a master's student here. I have a question, which is, we now see a trend of works or jobs being moving from a model of rather centralized to distributed.
Okay.
And how do we better prepare ourselves for that trend?
Yeah, so instead of centralized, it's scattered, right? Okay? It's quite similar to the points made earlier. Thanks. Yes? No mic. Can someone pass me the mic? No, we need the mic for the recording. Can both of you stand together so you can engage? Yeah. Go ahead. You can ask while you walk.
So previously mentioned by the panelists and the moderator that you've actually offered the perspective that technology and AI and automation, they will actually be displacing certain jobs. But have you considered the possibility that sometimes automation itself, it doesn't necessarily leads to just displacement. It could be playing a supplementary role. It could be offering that the statistics, the big data, the analysis available for us humans to finally make that decision. So I hope you could share your opinion on that, how we factor in the machinery and AI can play a supplementary role to what we have, and how it enhances our decision making. One more question.
Okay.
Regarding the part, education has been frequently brought up in this discussion, but what I feel that's been lacking is we've been relying on a very old, traditional, conventional mentality when we talk about education. We mention schools, we mention universities, we mention universities opening up modules for adults to learn. But from my experience personally, I've known this entrepreneur. His name is Asim Qureshi. I don't know if you heard of him. He's an Oxford-educated physicist, but now he's an entrepreneur. He's based in Malaysia. So the way he educates his children is that he doesn't believe in traditional schools. So what he believes in is homeschooling. And I know that many of you have certain stigmas against homeschooling, precisely because most of the students that we know through homeschool are child with certain learning disabilities, certain learning perhaps not really cognitively comparable to that of a normal person. But his kids, surprisingly, they actually been able to achieve admirable results. From the age of 10 to 12, they actually completed the whole A-level syllabus, and they achieved like tremendous grades. Now, some of you might be thinking that these are, individuals who.
So what's your question?
The question is, why not consider opening up a freedom of education? Do not follow the narrative.
Don't overstructure it.
Don't overstructure it. Do not follow the narrative that you have to go through 6 years of compulsory primary education. You have to go through certain exams, and only by those means you are able to achieve success.
Yeah, okay, point taken. So the 3 key questions, I'll come to you, young lady. Character, importance of character. How do you deal with a distributed work pattern? And your question about not being overly structured, right?
Education not being overly structured. And automation, AI playing a supplementary
maybe
role as well.
opportunities as opposed to a dysfunction.
It's not really opportunities, because we're talking about displacing them and we're giving them another opportunity.
Another option.
This is different. We are supplementary their roles.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got it. Last question. Oh, you don't have a mic, so you also have to stand here. Do we have an extra mic for her, please? I joined them. You'll have to stand next to her. Could you run here? You see, the elderly man is running.
60 years old.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Janine, and I'm an early child educator from SUSS.
Okay.
So basically, my question is quite related to education as well, since I'm an educator. So the question is, how would technology be playing a role in younger children's minds, especially the early childhood industry? And secondly is, as you guys know, that probably educators, social workers, and elderly care people would probably be not replaced by robots. So how do you think we can go about, helping, using technology in a way to integrate it in the lives of, people that are working, which may not be taken over by robots? So how can they be complementary to this industry as well? Thank you.
What a great question to end the discussion on. So I would like one comment from, that's all the time we have, one comment from each panelist. You can choose to respond to any of those questions, right? But try and deal with all of them collectively, right? If you can, because this is how nimble you have to be, okay? So we will start with the mother of nimbleness, Warren Fernandez, okay? Yeah.
I think you should give that title of Mr. Nimble to this gentleman who
nimbly
asked his
walked
question
over.
as he was walking there and rose to your challenge. But I mean, I just want to give you a real life story of someone who is doing what you're talking about. I have in my newsroom a young man, 29 years old, called Rod. And he is Argentinian. He has moved his entire family all around the world. He was in Australia, now he's come to work in Singapore. He is someone who is good with coding, and he's also someone who can take content. So we would give him a set of numbers or data, and he would transform that numbers into beautiful graphics. But he's working not just with people in Singapore, he works with coders in Peru, in Poland, in that distributed sense that you're talking about. That, to me, is nimbleness. The person who can take information, work with technology, work with people all around the world who are not like him, and turn out content that is of value to all of us, which you pay for, which creates value, which, you know, if I ask him, is this work or is this leisure, I don't think he'd be able to answer. It's both.
Would you want to respond to any of the other questions, for example, about preschool education, character building?
I shall leave that to Janet.
Okay.
Okay, so if I can, I'm sure you all know, fintech is now a big industry, all right? So exactly to the question that you asked, you know, as jobs get seemingly displaced, remember we said work will change, all right? So those very same people who have got experience and knowledge and, you know, in-depth interactions in a particular field, many of them, especially if they've got some enterprising spirit in them that has been kept locked because their parents got them to join the bank, it's a safer job, and now it's not so safe. Many of them are out there in the fintech industry. You're going to hear about medtech industry, edtech industry, and edutech industry. So, like we said, if the human spirit continues to prevail, like I believe it will, you know, those jobs displaced may open up new opportunities for the very individuals who are prepared to be nimble. And I also want to congratulate you for showing what is nimble. Nimble means not talk only, act. He actually walked across. All right, so that's one. Second point is about distributed. Well, I looked around here, I guess, you know, I lived 3 years in Japan, I lived 8 years in China. And of course, I'm Singaporean. So if you ask me what's the survival, you know, skill for this, is really, number one, you've got to be open. Number two, you've got to be collaborative, all right? So I know it sounds like a very simple kind of skills, right? Because if you are open, and you can ask many of my other colleagues here who live in Singapore now, but they come from somewhere else, you've got to be open so that you will be prepared to listen and be empathetic, but at the same time, you've got to be prepared to be collaborative, all right? And just to add to his point about that Argentinian young man, all right, your world is going to be a world not of just a career or a job. It's a portfolio of skills which you have that will bring into a portfolio of opportunities. Unlike my time, whereby loyalty brings us a career of a lifetime. All right, so that is, I think, the big difference.
Would you want to respond to their question?
Childhood education.
And character?
Oh yes, of course. All right, so for childhood education, I have 4 daughters, aged between 26 to 16. And so I absolutely agree. That's why I brought up about edutech, all right? That there is going to be more, you know, opportunities to actually use different kind of skills and create new jobs. You know what? In the past, it's all about, you know, the curriculum, the information, the data come out in a textbook, the teacher regurgitated it to the students. Now, with YouTube, with media, so all the guys in the media industry can translate themselves into educators because every whatever snippet of YouTube that you create or video or article can be used for education. So you will need designers, you will need writers and all kinds of other capabilities. So I would say your job in childhood education is to perhaps take up the challenge that Jack gave, and you're standing right next to each other, which is, it starts from there, right? How to create play as educating, fun, and learning. And the outcome would be, the ideal would be, wow, you learned, but you didn't realize that you were learning.
Okay. Well, she actually stopped very suddenly. I wasn't sure. Okay. Any quick responses? Quick means one line. Anyone? Good. Oh, okay, there is.
I think they still not tuned to character building. Character building is about curiosity, courage, compassion, commitment. collaboration, and calmness. But if you keep on talking about technology and use those Silicon Valley languages, you miss the point. Because the reality is we have to, as Janet said, find out what we want, have a purpose, and once we are driven by purpose, then the educational system can facilitate that. Right now, is you get the marks first, forget about everything you learn, and then start. I think that is very weak. Last night, we launched a new preschool curriculum called Think Equal, and this is a disruptive educational system because at 3 years old is the time to plant the seed for resilience.
Okay.
By the time they are older, very difficult.
All right, good. Patrick, you have the last word.
Yeah. Talking about technology and complementariness, I think the key thing, a bit oxymoron, but technology actually helps promote inclusiveness. Yeah, in many ways of the word. Makes jobs easier, safer, smarter in many ways. We have seen technology, for example, in big places in security, private security industry, for example. We needed 10 workers to go around this big installation to look out and do their jobs, regardless of weather, regardless of time, regardless of gender, regardless of age. Today, we just need 2 of them, being paid almost 10% salary, but not all, manning a command center with technology, CCTV, infrared, thermal, scanning. This is one example. Another good example would be in heavy lifting. Chambermaids and many of them who work in the hotels used to be able to only change bed sheets and do up rooms, say 6 at a time because the beds are heavy. But today, with technology, with new devices that we've been introducing through job redesign, we are able to make them be more productive and requiring them to have less workplace injuries and at the same time being more inclusive. And in fact, technology has enabled those with perhaps some disabilities to be able to take on some of these new jobs which don't require very hard labor or don't require certain parts of anatomy, etc., etc. So I think it's exciting times and a bit oxymoronic, but technology does, in a way, make things more inclusive.
Yeah. So, yes.
Can I just touch
quick one,
on
yes.
moral education? I think we shouldn't rely on public sector or MOE to be so heavily, teaching kids what it means to be of good character, what it means to be of good morals. I think from what you shared, I believe you are definitely a good parent. I think a lot of time we take it upon the family's responsibility of itself for the parents to share their personal experiences of their experience using technology, what problems it has created, what problems, what kind of friction it has caused between people, and how it has lubricated and in another form. Yeah, so that is the forefront. That's the form of candidness, a form of sharing, willingness to share, and to not rely on the government or whoever, anyone else for you to teach your kids morals. You should be taking up the responsibility yourself. Yeah. So
what an excellent point. And I think this is a great note to conclude this discussion, because I think it is about taking responsibility. Each one of us, and not pointing the finger at somebody else. Of course, the individual, businesses, society, and government all have different types of responsibility, but no one has the monopoly on responsibility. So if there's one word I'd like to sort of conclude with, based on all the discussions that we had today, that comes to my mind, what is needed most is a sense of accountability. For me, the word that really comes is, we all need to be accountable for whatever actions that we could be accomplices in, whether we are directly involved or not. We cannot turn our head away. It will affect us or the guy next to us. It is not just about compassion. For me, it is about accountability. Those who have more need to be accountable to those who have less. Those who have less need to be accountable to themselves to look for help. So for me, it is not about looking for a demon in AI. AI can be an enabler for everyone if we are accountable enough to provide access. If AI is limited in the way it provides access, it is crippling. So the people who actually hold the power of AI need to constantly look at how they can broaden the access to AI, and that is the responsibility, again, of the individual, of businesses, of society, and of government. So on that note, I'd like to ask you to join me to thank the panelists for a really honest and candid discussion. And I'd like to ask the panelists to thank the audience. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We've come to the end of the discussion.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you will agree with me that was a very stimulating discussion on the theme Beyond the End of Work. It's certainly worth taking note of and learning from different perspectives. NYAA Council would like to honor our panelist and moderator with a token of appreciation.
I now invite Mr. James So, Executive Director of National Youth Achievement Award Council, to present the plaque. Mr. So, please.
Mr. So will now present the token of appreciation of Mr. Patrick Tay, Member of Parliament for West Coast GRC and Chairman of Government Parliamentary Committee for Manpower, and Assistant Secretary General of National Trades Union Congress.
Ms. Jeanette Ong, Vice President of IBM Asia Pacific and Chairperson of Institute of Systems Science, National University of Singapore. Mr. Warren Fernandez, Editor-in-Chief of Singapore Press Holdings.
And lastly, Mr. Vishwa Sadasivan, Chief Executive Officer of Strategic Moves Private Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking the panelists and moderator for a very enlightening session. Thank you, Mr. So, and our distinguished panelists.
I would now like to invite Ms. Louise Luthi, member of the International Students Committee, University of St. Gallen, to tell us more about the St. Gallen Symposium's Wing of Excellence Award in May. Ms. Luthi, please.
Dear friends of the St. Gallen Symposium, my name is Louise and I'm here today together with Lasse here in the front row representing this year organizing team of the St. Gallen Symposium. So today I will be talking shortly about the St. Gallen Symposium itself and then presenting to you the St. Gallen Wings of Excellence Awards, our essay competition. So the St. Gallen Symposium, what is it all about? So it has been mentioned already this morning by Beat Ulrich. It's a yearly conference taking place each year in May at the University of St. Gallen. So this year is going to be from the 2nd to the 4th of May on the campus of the University of St. Gallen. Each year there is a different topic because we want the topic to be current, to be relevant, and to tackle the fields of business, economics, as well as politics. So this year's topic is Beyond the End of Work. So we've been discussing it already today quite extensively. What is also unique about the St. Gallen Symposium is that it's all organized and run by students. So this year, Lasse and I are 2 out of 30 students taking 1 year off our studies and organizing the entire conference. Last but not least, at the heart of the St. Gallen Symposium is the dialogue of generations. So meaning we have 2 generations coming together to the St. Gallen Symposium. So we have leaders of today, but we also have leaders of tomorrow. And our leaders of tomorrow coming to the St. Gallen Symposium are young entrepreneurs, young researchers, and young politicians, but also students. to name a few leaders of tomorrow, leaders of today, who already came to the St. Gallen Symposium. So we had Christine Lagarde from the IMF, we had Kofi Annan, or Dominic Barton from McKinsey. Regarding Singapore, we had last year the presence of the Minister of Education, Ong Ye Kung. 2 years ago was Tharman Shanmugaratnam, as well as previous President Tony Chan. So in order for you to have a better impression of what the St. Gallen Symposium really is, and for you to be introduced to the St. Gallen Wings of Excellence Awards, here's a short video I would like to show you.
Every year, the idyllic Swiss town of St. Gallen hosts the St. Gallen Symposium, an event where current and future international leaders come together to discuss important topics. It is a forum for debate, interaction and networking between international luminaries such as Neil Ferguson, Christine Lagarde, Jack Ma, Dambisa Moyo, Tharman Shanmugaratnam, and you. Young leaders are the core of the symposium, and your voice matters. That's why we want you to take part in our global essay competition and qualify as one of 200 outstanding leaders of tomorrow for our forum in May. It's a unique chance to influence relevant discussions and bring your ideas to an international community of leaders of today and tomorrow.
My two favorite things about the St. Gallen Symposium was the close and intimate access to leaders of today and the instant sense of community that was built amongst the leaders of tomorrow.
In St. Gallen, everybody is extremely passionate about the work that they do, and it feels like you're in Disneyland for changemakers.
I feel very fortunate to have been invited to this symposium. It significantly broadened my perspective on the impact I could have, and continues to today.
We will fly you to Switzerland for 1 week and cover all your expenses. As one of the very best competitors, you will present your idea in person to members of the global political and business elite. You will have a chance to interact with top leaders from industry, politics and media. The 3 awardees will share 30,000 Swiss francs in prize money. You will become part of our vibrant and global community. Your exposure to the symposium's community will be particularly unique in 2018 as the competition celebrates its 30th edition since 1989. Register now and learn how to enter the competition. Take your chance and apply until the 1st of February. See you in St. Gallen.
So really unique in St. Gallen as well is so those 2 generations coming together. What we aim to is really to put them on an equal footing. So leaders of tomorrow come to the St. Gallen Symposium and they will not only listen to leaders of today, but they will also actively engage and really proactively challenge leaders of today. And leaders of today, they do not only come to speak, but they also come to ask for your ideas, your opinion, and challenge you as well. The whole format that we provide at the St. Gallen Symposium is also made so that you are really fostered to this dialogue between both generations. So we have not only panel discussions, but also work sessions, as well as Leaders of Tomorrow small talks, where you will actually be actively engaged. So now that you've got an insight on the St. Gallen Symposium itself, I'm going to mention to you the St. Gallen Wings of Excellence Award, which is the way how you could actually be selected to come free of charge to the St. Gallen Symposium in May 2018. So the St. Gallen Wings of Excellence Award is, as you might have understood it by now, the famous essay competition in which you can take part in. So each year we actually, so the organizing team decide of the topic of the year. So this year's topic is, as it has been mentioned, beyond the end of work. And this is the broad topic of the essay competition. Then more specifically, the exact question of the essay competition is the following. So robots are coming for your job. How do you augment yourself to stay economically relevant? So this is not an academic paper, nor a research paper, but this is really an essay you have to write, so it's maximal 2,100 words, and you will have to be really creative, really original, and really kind of challenge the status quo by expressing your own idea of what you think will allow you to remain economically relevant in the near future. So the following steps are required for you to apply for this essay competition. So you have to register on the following platform, www.symposium.org/apply. Then, yeah, obviously write your essay and submit it by 1st of February 2018 on the latest. Yeah, so lastly, for you to get a broad idea, we receive each year 1,000 essays from 80 different countries around the world and more than 160 universities around the world. Out of those 1,000 essays, then the 100 very best essays will be selected and invited to come to the Gallen Symposium. And then the very best 6 essays will have the opportunity to present the ideas they developed in the essay in front of the whole audience on stage at the Gallen Symposium itself. So if you have any question, do not hesitate to ask anytime. Here's my email address. You can contact me if, in case of any question. Otherwise, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Luthi. That was very helpful in letting our students know how exciting it can be to be involved in the St. Gallen Symposium in the future.
I would now like to invite Mr. Alexander C. Melkus, General Manager of C. Melkus GmbH & Co. and Special Advisor to the St. Gallen Foundation for International Students to deliver his closing address. Mr. Melkus, please.
Thank you very much, everybody. 3 brief thoughts and topics. First one, fantastic panel, fantastic discussion. Thank you really much for the contribution. My take on this is nimbleness, compassion, and mindset cannot be automated. So we are humans, and humanity and the way humans behave will always be there, and that is really our opportunity. I graduated in '94 from St. Gallen University. I did an Asia business trip on my first job. In '94, when I arrived in Hong Kong, there was an ad. At that time, email was just starting, and we were still using fax. It was by HSBC. And HSBC had this great ad that says, "You cannot fax a handshake." Okay, you cannot fax. This was 20 years ago. Some of you don't even know fax. But it's really very important to understand that as long as we are humans, and we will always be humans, there were many things that you cannot automate, and it's a plumber, for sure, it's the way we eat, all these things, and a lot of normal things will still be available, and while there are many jobs that can be automated and digitalized, I think there are many more that actually cannot be automated and digitalized, and there are so many opportunities still out there. So I'm totally the positive and the optimist in this discussion, and think it's only about opportunities and enablement and actually giving access and opportunities. So many more people who didn't have it before. Second thought, you saw this great movie right now about the St. Gallen Conference, about the opportunities that it offers to you as students. Please share this opportunity with your friends and with your colleagues. In the last 15 years, together with James, I think we have almost 200 students from Singapore who benefited and from participating in this event. Many of them have embarked on great careers and are part of a great community. So it's really unique, and it's something that in itself you cannot believe the experience that you will have when you join this event in St. Gallen. And I encourage you to write the essay. It's not a huge task to do it. Don't think what the actual people who correct it want to read, but really write from your heart and write what you think, and then you have the best chance to really qualify for this event. Third thought and third part, as a reminder, this event has been organized by students 4 students and CEOs for 48 years right now. But it's really students who interrupt their curriculum. Lasse and Louise are today here. They stop they studies for 1 year. They come here to Singapore. We have a beautiful office in Amoy Street. And from here, the student team operates in Asia and works in the markets in Japan and in China, of course, Southeast Asia. And what they also do is they raise funds. And now I'm looking at the first 3 rows here, more than at the student body. This organization is also dependent on funding. We have been very, very good in building a relationship with Singapore and St. Gallen. But on the funding side, on the corporate support side, there is still a little bit of an imbalance. And Louise is here in the market to find sponsors and to find Singapore companies who support actually the Singaporean students to come and that we can actually fund these trips. Okay, with this, and just as a broad concept, I really want to thank James So again for this great event, fourth edition to this time. And it's dialogue, and we practice this. Viswa, you're a great moderator, and to include the audience, because this is what St. Gallen is all about, exchange between the different generations and between the different disciplines. So with this, I think there's a lunch reception, and once again, thank you for the invitation, and I hope to see many and some of you in St. Gallen in May. Thank you.
Thank you once again, and have a pleasant weekend.